our criminals are the product of a very, very flawed system. And unfortunately, in reporting in India, we have some fantastic journalism happening, but we really, really could not give fewer craps about the facts we put out sometimes. The victim's name will be spelled completely differently across 5 different news channels. And so we're writing a story and we're like, what do? We have so many varying versions of the story, and this is disrespectful to the story at large. I remember covering the Ajmer rape scandal and feeling so scared because that was such a politically charged case and religiously charged case. And it was both coming together to create this really, really terrifying story.
Have there been stories you chose not to tell? That you started doing some research and then you said, okay, this is not going to happen, and what could be the reasons for that? Hi, I'm Vamika and this is A Cup of Context. What we're exploring today is true crime stories. It's about why we listen to them at all and the responsibility that comes with telling them and listening to them. How we choose to tell these stories shapes what we think justice looks like. My guest today is someone whose voice many people will recognize almost instantly. Her name is Aishwarya Singh. She's the co-creator and owner of Desi Crime Studios, a platform that has brought South Asian true crime stories to a global audience with gripping narrative, research, and honest care. What does true crime reveal about society, about us as listeners? That's the context we want to explore today. Hi, Aishwarya. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm Aishwarya, co-founder of Desi Studios, co-host of the Desi Crime podcast, and I can't wait to get into all things women, society, culture, context, and crime.
Perfect. I'm so happy to have you here. We'll do this in 3 parts. Let's talk about your responsibility as a storyteller first, then talk about patterns you've seen related to gender violence, and then let's go into people we always skip, which are the people who are listening, which are the most important people
those,
here.
yeah.
Right? Okay, so let's get into it. First, tell me, why do you think crime stories are so universally compelling across culture, across language, across age? Tell me why.
There's also this notion now that we're listening to more crime than ever before. I think it's not necessarily true that we're more curious now than we've ever been. I think we've always been deeply intrigued by a darker side to human psyche. It's just we have more mediums to listen to it now. We now have documentaries and we have fiction and we have podcasts and we have reels on Instagram. So I don't think it's necessarily true that we've become more obsessed with crime. I think we've always been equally intrigued, just our mediums have increased. I think there is something to be said about wanting to experience the darker side of humanity, to want to understand the life of a serial killer, what got someone there, to want to understand the psyche of a victim's family that fought for justice for 20 years in a system that'll stop you from doing that. But also, I think our listenership at Desi Crime is 70% female.
Oh, wow.
So there's a question to be asked on why women. And I think the answer is we're predominantly the victims. And there's something in us that wants us to experience the fear that another victim faced without actually being in harm's way. I think it's the same as a man really wanting to watch a war movie. They're the protagonists in the story. They identify with the themes of the story. Societally, it makes sense to their lives. I think for women, crime is the same way. The struggles there, the fears there make sense to us more than they do to men. And I think we want to experience those without actually being in the situation of a victim.
That's such an ironic, sad and beautiful way to put it, because this is very much what I was going to come to later. I think with that, there's also a fine line between telling a story and then turning it into a spectacle, right?
Yeah.
Where do you tread that line? What do you choose to include? What do you choose to leave out when you're doing your research? And what do you think it carries for you when you're telling stories of real people and this is real grief?
I think that's deeply important. When we started the podcast, we were just 2 kids who, wanted to do something we thought was cool. Podcasting as a medium was taking off. We had very different paths in life. I really wanted to go to law school. Aryan wanted to be an astrobiologist, whatever that means.
Oh, wow.
So this is not at all what we saw our life becoming. So it's not that we were journalism students called out to tell these tales or anything. We started as just young kids. But over 6 years of running the podcast now, I think obviously we've developed the protocol to be able to do this right. Not to say we're perfect anymore, but I think we've developed the systems in place. And I think it falls into multiple pieces. The first is get the facts right. I think you do justice to a story in terms of its facts. And unfortunately, in reporting in India, we have some fantastic journalism happening, but we really could not give fewer craps about the facts we put out sometimes. The victim's name will be spelled completely differently across 5 different news channels.
Screamed out.
Absolutely. You won't know the story behind how the perpetrator was caught will be different across the court document and a major reporting channel. And so we're writing a story and we're like, what do? We have so many varying versions of the story. And this is disrespectful to the story at large. To think that it doesn't matter how someone's name was spelled. To think that it doesn't matter where their parents were the day that they died. Those details matter. So we try to do our best with that. There are obviously moments where we get conflicting stories and we like to put those out to the audience, is that we have this version and we have that version. We don't know which is correct. And you guys
you do
can
that
decide.
beautifully.
Right. So that is one attempt at doing that. I think the second is tone with which you narrate. And by tone, I don't necessarily mean a facetious, unnecessarily somber conversation. I mean just an honest tone. So when we're discussing parts of victim's story when they were a kid and they're funny, we're laughing in the episode too. We're not trying to make it seem like we're here to tell you a morose tale and everything about this person's life is reduced to the day they died. There was more to their life, and there was fun, and there was beauty, and there was happiness. And in those moments, we're chuckling and we're laughing and we're cracking jokes. I remember we were narrating the Gaurav Tiwari story, and he went to college for like UFO training or something. And I remember Aryan and I cracking a joke that any Desi parent would have like thrown a chappal at our head, like, what is this degree that he studied?
Yeah.
And so we're laughing at that too. But when we're reaching the bits that are tragic, when we're reaching the injustice that are episodes, we're crying too. So I think honesty of tone.
Because you're seeing the victim as a whole. Right?
As a
It is a
whole.
whole person
They aren't just
that you're
that
talking
one
about.
day.
They're not just the incident.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the honesty of the tone that also just does justice to who they are. I think thirdly, acknowledging that we as 25-year-olds sitting in Delhi NCR, having studied in the US, when we're narrating the tale of a caste-based mass murder in the middle of nowhere, Maharashtra, in a village so abjectly poor that we can never fathom poverty of that nature, we're not the torchbearers of justice there. We're just trying to tell a story, right? I think acknowledging the disparity between that experience and ours, we're not trying to relate. We're not trying to say we understand, because we cannot. And I think acknowledging the disparity there is important in being able to tell an honest tale. Well, I'll add to that, I think sometimes making a spectacle is important, because this is a country that can get complacent. All countries across the world, they can stay quiet to injustice. And sometimes you need spectacle to kind of shake people out.
And to reach people more.
To reach people more. Something like a "No One Killed Jessica" headline, that is
Yes.
spectacle in essence.
Yes.
But it became sort of the cornerstone of that case because it appalled and it shocked and it created outrage.
So responsibly creating spectacles
Absolutely.
is the way that
Yeah,
you're doing
that is it.
Have there been stories you chose not to tell? That you started doing some research and then you said, okay, this is not going to happen. And what could be the reasons for that?
I think on the more sort of practical administrative side are reasons like, okay, this is a tragic tale, but there's not enough information to make an hour-long episode. Obviously, there are podcasts who are okay doing 15-minute long episodes, and obviously we could do those and put stories out there, but there's a format we've stuck to, which is this many minutes long that people tune in for. The longer the episode, everyone says attention spans are shortening, but we get so much love for our 1 hour plus episodes. So I think on the more logistical side, there are things like that. Other than that, I don't think so. We've covered everything from something like a Kandahar hijacking to an honor killing to the Dubai princess, a deeply political case where the Dubai princess has been missing for years now. We've covered both sides of the political spectrum. We've covered both sides of religious conflict, which are all themes that show up invariably in crime. You can't separate the crime happening within our country from the themes of this country. And so I think we've done it all. We've covered stories of closeted men who've murdered wives because, and you need to give the context to that. Why would a closeted man murder his wife when he was forced to marry her? What is punishment in a situation like that? So many different themes. I think we haven't shied away from those.
You haven't at all. And also, let me ask you, what about political backlash? Because if I go back to the Sunanda Pushkar thing that you did, it was beautiful. When you're making a decision like that, are you worried about what's going to come the other way? Does
Obviously.
something come the other way?
We're only humans, so obviously there is the question in our mind. I remember covering the Ajmer rape scandal and feeling so scared and we were much younger then than we are now as well. It was a couple of years ago. But that was such a politically charged case and religiously charged case. And it was both coming together to create this really, really terrifying story. And so one fears A, political backlash, B, backlash from the audience that's supposed to listen and supposed to like the content that you put out. I think it helps to have a 2-person team in this,
Right.
which is me and Aryan, where it helps to gain strength from the other person who maybe isn't feeling your fear because they're not the one covering it. So they don't fully understand where you're coming from.
Like reverse projection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they can do that little bit of nudging necessary to keep our ethos alive. And I think we've both done that for each other time and time again, where just we've reminded each other of what we truly stand for. And so, no, we haven't.
Very interesting and very responsible. Now, I'm going to come to patterns. Patterns, gender violence. After working on so many cases, what patterns have you noticed in crimes involving women?
I think, firstly, a significant majority of them are against women is the most obvious pattern of all. Almost all of them are a consequence of intimate partner violence is another one. The fact that the moment a woman is missing or a woman is murdered and the police quickly turn to the partner or the romantic interest or the ex-romantic interest is not by mistake, it's not by fluke, it's very much backed by stats that there is a very high likelihood that it is the intimate partner behind the crime. In South Asia, the interesting thing is because there is so much taboo associated with leaving a marriage, a relationship, your children, women who do make the decision to try and leave abusive relationships are at a much higher risk of
Just not
the
allowed
crime.
to.
They're not allowed to. And there's something about the male ego to be said here as well, where that is not necessarily the right a woman has to be able to start over, to be able to start with someone else, to be able to start afresh with happiness and joy and peace away from the person she chose to supposedly spend her life with. And so those women are at much higher risk of violence that ends in death. So there are so many of these really, really unfortunate patterns. There are obviously patterns of domestic violence the other way, where death is on the perpetrator. So these are women who've spent years in abusive relationships, and there just comes a day where they snap.
Power to them.
Right.
I'm
That's
so
what a lot of
happy
people in the
that-
comments say. Obviously, they deserve some kind of. We live in a society. They deserve some punishment to come their way. But does the justice system need to give them the understanding that this was not someone in the right frame of mind? They were so scared of being hit and killed one day that they retaliated and they killed their perpetrator. So there are patterns like that, which we've seen now. So multiple.
And are there recurring dynamics or warning cases across unrelated stories that you notice? For example, a girl in a big city and a girl in a small village. Some things that you look at a story and you wouldn't necessarily feel they could have anything in common about their life, but it ends up happening more often than not. Dynamics of relationships.
I think a big one is we're all experiencing societal pressures the same. And I don't mean by we all, I don't mean me versus the victim. I mean women across strata and economic class and caste sometimes. In terms of crimes like these, where we're talking about violent deaths perpetrated by intimate partners, we're all experiencing the societal pressures of marriage, of raising a child, of not leaving. We're kind of all experiencing them. And we're all experiencing them incredibly highly. We're experiencing them from the same sources. It comes from parents. It usually comes from the partner's parents. And so, yeah, I think it's very important to look at those in terms of intimate partner violence. Those they repeat across sects of society. And there's a conversation to be had on, yes, India has the lowest divorce rate anywhere in the world. South Asia in general is very, very low, where a Scandinavian country would have a 70% divorce rate. India and other South Asian countries rest at a 1%. But what is the cost of that? If there is a cost to the 70% divorce rate, which is children in single households and women without support, what is the cost of a 1% divorce rate?
Also, what is the support these women have in these marriages anyway?
What is it? Exactly. It's not that parents are the support. So, yeah, what is the cost of that 1%? And a lot of times, for a lot of our cases, the cost is crime. And the cost is an end like this, which isn't worth it.
What stayed with you personally from these patterns? Has something changed the way you see the world, how you move through it?
I'm sure it has, in ways that I'm more cautious of my surroundings. I'm acutely aware of the kind of person I want to end up with. I'm on the lookout for red flags and behaviors.
This is fully off topic, but what are these red flags and what type of person is this?
I'm with someone at the moment, so I don't want to. But I think interference of extended family, self-reliance, someone's attitude to the fact that, to how I spend my money, for example. I want to put it out there that I spent on something frivolous and I spent a little bit more, and I want to gauge the reaction. I want to know how that sounds to my partner. So I want to test out all those dynamics, right? So I think I've just become really acutely aware of those and been on the lookout. But I think overarchingly, Aryan and I both keep coming back to this understanding that the world is inherently a good place. And I don't think we could run this podcast without having that at the core.
I know, that would be a very, very dark road.
We would have fully lost our minds.
Yeah.
So I think we keep coming back to that. And we keep coming back to the stats of we're better on all metrics today than we were 100 years ago, whether it be how safe our women are, whether it be how long mothers live after childbirth, whether it be poverty rate, whether it be infant mortality rate, whether it be education level. Other than climate change, I think we're better on every single metric that we could have been. People who die from wars, whatever it may be. And so I think it helps to come back to that realization.
That's true. Even if it's little, it's happening.
It's
still
happening for sure.
Right. And that brings me back to audience and consumption and our society and the people who are viewing. What do you think these true crime stories reveal about societies that we otherwise miss as audience?
I think a little bit more uncomfortable truth that they do reveal is that our criminals are the product of a very, very flawed system. And our victims end up being the cost that we as society pay for that. But if we want to correct for this behavior, if we want a more peaceful country to live in, a safer street for women to walk on, what we need to understand is not how this woman ended up at night on a lonely street. That's not it. What we need to understand is the story of the perpetrator. And that is entirely where the solution lies. And in understanding that, the pattern, another one of the unfortunate patterns we've realized, is that our victims, our perpetrators, are the product of, again, abject poverty, deep abuse in their childhood, whether physical, emotional, or sexual, men and women alike. Women are not as often the perpetrators, but these men are the product and are the victims of sexual abuse in their childhood. Poverty so abject, there isn't a day's worth of meal. There isn't any education beyond like the second, third grade. There is a culture of disrespect to women that they've grown up seeing day in, day out from their fathers, from their uncles, in their workplaces. So they are the product of that society. They weren't born to be the people they were born to be. I remember covering the Vishal Mehrotra case about a year ago, which is the story of a young boy, 8-year-old boy, who disappeared in London on the day that Princess Diana was getting married. And he's just vanished off a busy street. And his body was later found like some 80 kilometers away. So he was killed. He didn't just like get lost and die of hypothermia or whatever. And many years later, the alleged reason, we don't know what actually happened to him, but one of the theories was that he was part of a child pedophile ring, which apparently were really notorious in the UK back in the 80s and 90s. They were running out of boarding schools. So it was these teachers in boarding schools.
So properly institutionalized.
Absolutely. And multiple of them.
Yeah.
And hundreds and hundreds of kids. There was this one particular boarding school in those years, 80s, 90s, which had a pedophile ring running out of it. And that ring had an affinity for South Asian boys. And so many people went on to theorize that that's what happened to Vishal. He got caught by one of these men. Many years later, Vishal's stepbrother grew up to want to investigate his younger brother's death and went down this rabbit hole of trying to find other victims of that pedophile ring. And when he starts looking for these names, he starts building a list and a roster. Someone tells him that don't reach out to all of these victims because some of them today are members of running pedophile rings themselves.
Naturally so.
Naturally so. And one of my most favorite quotes is, we're all victims of victims and abuse perpetrates. And it runs in a cycle. So I think the solution lies in the conditioning and the environment of our perpetrators more than it does of our victims. Our victims are just living their lives. They're young women doing what they should do.
Absolutely.
And they're not ideal victims, but they're human just like any of us. The solution is on the other side.
And the parallel thing that's running in society is while these people are going through what they're going through, they're taught the only only route they can have to take this out, and the only people this can be taken out on, will always be women.
100%.
No matter who has done this to you, it has to be done only to women.
Absolutely. Sometimes someone will tell me, or I'll hear a story of someone's partner with a lot of anger issues. And the first thought in my mind is, does this man have anger issues to his boss? Is it unidirectional anger issues targeted at one kind of person? Or are you actually do have anger issues? So you're lashing out at everyone and every... It's an interesting question to ask. If you think someone in your life has anger issues.
This is a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
I can talk about this for hours. Issues too?
Yeah.
So convenient.
Very
anger
conveniently
issues.
towards women or children or animals. Or,
And what do these stories show us about institutions? Because you're also looking not just as what's happened between the perpetrator and the victim, but how the police acted, how law acted, how justice was, and everything in between.
I think what it teaches you is that class matters.
Yes.
And our police may be a representative for each and every one of us equally, but on ground, the murder of children in a poor Noida village like Nithari will not be treated the same way as children from a different area of Noida. Just 2 streets across is Sector 18 or Sector 25 with homes worth crores. And children going missing from there will be treated a lot more differently than a poor Mali's children going missing, a daily wage laborer's children going missing. So class matters. I think it teaches us, on the brighter side, it teaches us we're getting better. I genuinely believe so. More of us have ins now and an insight into how the police works than ever before. More of it gets reported now than ever before. For a case to happen and for the public to not know or hear anything about it is not ordinary anymore. We will have details. So many of us have the ability to sit inside a courtroom and watch proceedings happen, a privilege not afforded to many, many years ago. There is better journalism happening today than ever before. There are more independent journalists and investigators working on these cases than ever before. More people come out on the streets than ever before. Because of social media, each and every one of us can raise alarm for a case that maybe didn't make it to the limelight for XYZ reasons. And so on the brighter side, I think there is change, but we're a slow system. In a country of 2 billion people, we're an incredibly slow system. And justice takes years if it even arrives at the end of it.
But it's very fast for some.
It is fast for some, and that is where class matters.
So some studies also suggest that for certain people, and this person, by the way, but for watching crime or psychological thrillers has a calming effect. That instead of increasing anxiety, it reduces it. So for me, I was always this weird child. I was watching ghost stories, listening to ghost stories before going to bed at night.
That's me.
Yeah, I find it so calming. And I think that's also because I'm generally an anxious person otherwise. But do you think that has something to do with knowing that this is so distant from my reality?
Yeah, it's controlled danger. It's like if you jump off a cliff without a harness, you're terrified and you probably die of a heart attack before you ever hit the ground because you're so scared.
Yeah.
But for people who play the sport of doing it, it's the most calming thing in the world. They call it therapeutic. They call rock climbing therapeutic. People dive into tiny caves and call it therapeutic. Because it's controlled danger.
Yeah.
And I think that is what crime and horror is. It's experiences we pray to God, cross our fingers, cross our toes that we're not at the forefront of. But we get to experience them through this media in a way that is controlled.
Right. Like it's like our minds reassure us that this couldn't happen to me, but I would like to know.
Yeah. I'm curious about how it felt to be in that moment.
Yeah.
And so.
But to connect it to that, before I started this podcast with you, I was talking to my friend about responsibility of listeners, right? And she's very much the type of person who can't tune into things like this. And she was telling me that I find it so strange that you're folding your clothes on your bed or like you're about to sleep or you're supposed to do something like that and you're in the background as entertainment listening to something horrific that happened to a real life person. How are you connecting this? And I think this just made me think about who we are as listeners, because I'm definitely not listening to this as purely entertainment. I know there's a sensitivity and a responsibility that's coming within that while I am listening to this. So for all of your audiences, what do you think, if you had to tell them how you would want them to listen, what you would want them to take away, who they are as listeners. What is that for you?
I think what I want them to take away is very blatant in the episode itself. I usually try to end on an overarching theme of what I want the audience to take away, what I want them to remember. A lot of times it's remembering the person's life. So many times there are steps we can still take to help the family out. So there's links in the bio, whatever. So whatever that call to action is, I try to include that in the episode. Other than that, to be completely honest with you, I'm not going to tell the audience how to listen to the podcast. It's not my place. And the fact of the matter is, true crime is entertainment. And people like to throw that as a jab sometimes, or out of curiosity ask how we make peace with that in our mind. And the way you make peace with that in your mind is that just because something is entertainment doesn't mean the audience is only leaving entertained. I don't think our audience is leaving every episode going, haha, clothes folded, like, let's go on a shopping run. That's not how they're leaving. The comment sections are full of people saying, yes, I do listen to this when I fold my laundry. Yes, I do listen to this when I go to bed. Yes, I do listen to it on my commute where I've replaced music with this. But I'm leaving moved. I'm leaving with an understanding of an experience that I didn't have.
And also honoring the memory of the person that you're listening.
This person will live in my mind now, and their story will live with me. So it's, again, going back to like a war movie analogy. War movies are fundamentally entertainment.
I was just going to say, yeah.
But that doesn't mean we're leaving only entertained. We're leaving with a bunch of emotions. And a lot of time that emotion is, thank God we're not in a country at war right now, because this is horrible. I hope we can prevent war, because the loss of life at this scale for what gain at the end is probably not worth it. It's good that we live in a more peaceful world than ever before. So it's okay with entertainment. Maybe the way to get a message through to an audience today isn't to be on Aaj Tak, because that's not where they're sitting. Maybe it is for it to be a true crime podcast that is an hour-long episode on YouTube that they listen to while folding their laundry.
I do.
It's good. And if that's how the message is going across, so be it. We'll be entertainment, but you're going to leave more than just entertained, and that's fine.
I absolutely agree. Okay, one last thing. Tell me, if you had to start an NGO tomorrow, okay, for women, after all of these details that you have gone into, if you had to pick one thing that you think would serve a purpose factually, actually on ground, what do you think that would be for you?
Obviously, this would require understanding the dynamics of NGOs and what the market needs.
Jo bhi, nahi pata, for example, doesn't matter.
If I just get to shoot my shot and do something that will help someone, I wish I could make women financially independent. I think so much of the problem of getting married too soon, getting married wrong, ending up in dangerous situations, whether it be prostitution or situations like organ trafficking where you end up after prostitution. So many of these situations, or an internalized sexism where you're the mother-in-law perpetrating this on a daughter-in-law, or you're the mother pushing your daughter to get married this way. Whatever it may be, so much of that is the consequence of a lack of financial independence. And the amazing thing about financial independence is that for a long time, it'll tie together with education. And I think those two together, they're literally the women's liberation movement, in my opinion, in a capsule, like in a nutshell form. If you could do anything to empower a woman, it's education and financial independence. So that's
beautiful, Aishwarya. Thank you so much for talking to me
today. Thank you so
today.
much for having me.
Thank you.